Who will the Bengals sign in free agency? Hi again, everyone. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com and Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Welcome in. Where free agency is almost here, and hopefully you already caught my ideal scenario, my free agent plan, and what I would do if the Bengals gave me the reins here in free agency. But it's time to break down what I think they're going to do. My prediction for what the Bengals do in free agency. And we have some of the same things, but a lot of differences. The overall themes certainly remain the same. And I think it's going to start with the offensive line, much like you, me, everybody else. We're focused on that, right? Especially outside free agents. That's where they're going to start. And to me, I have them sign Ryan Jensen, in my plan. I think they're going to go after Ryan Jensen. Ultimately, they settle for Bradley Bozeman, who's younger, who's someone that they like a lot, and I think could certainly and would certainly bolster the center position for them. And he's played a little bit of guard, but I think he's a center, and I think that's how they view him. But to me, if Jensen gets paid a ton, I don't think they're going to break the bank, right? I don't think they're going to get into funny money. Bozeman might be, that middle ground where he's still a top-end tight end, or top-end center, but he's not he's got age on his side, and you're not breaking the bank, and it allows you to spend money elsewhere. Let's stick with offensive line, and then I'll dive into some of the guys I think they re-sign, because I think the Bengals' focus is a lot on re-signing their own. And so let's do that in a second. But I also think, and this is a guy that I had in my plan, Andrew Norwell. It just makes too much sense. The Bengals don't want to spend huge money on a guard. They just don't want to do it. That's not something, they weren't in on Joe Thuney the way people wanted him to be last year. They're never going to pay $15 million to Brandon Scherf. They're just, it's not going to be that. I don't think they're going to get in the James Daniels sweepstakes necessarily. And so, yeah, they could go after some of these other guys. But I think that Andrew Norwell is the fit for them. And yeah, he doesn't have age on his side, but the Bengals, they're going to go with a guy like Norwell and then hope that some of these young guys develop behind him. So I have them plugging him in at left guard, 3 years, $7 million per, 3 years, $21 million. As far as Bozeman, I would say 3 to 4 years in that $9.5 million range. Jensen could be in that $13 million range, just to give you an idea of the differences between the two. And then after that, well, it gets interesting, because do the Bengals go after Larry Ogunjobi? Do they keep B.J. Hill? Do they try to just really slide in there and keep both? I don't think so. I think they're using a ton of cap space, and not think, I know. They're using a ton of cap space on the defensive line as is. DJ Reader, we know he signed that 4-year, $53 million deal. Trey Hendrickson, 4 years, $60 million. Sam Hubbard, 4 years, $40 million. A lot of cap space already being dedicated and put into that defensive line. I think they're going to keep one. And if I had to guess, especially with all the reports, and I mentioned this in my plan, Larry Ogunjobi might break the bank. And if he does, then I think they go to Hill. And if Hill breaks the bank but Ogunjobi doesn't, I think they'll go to Ogunjobi. So I have Hill in this spot. Don't necessarily think that, they have him light years above Ogunjobi necessarily. But 3 years, $8.5 million, $9 million in that range. I think that gets done. I think they're going to keep one of those two guys and then address it in the draft as well. Speaking of their own guys, Eli Apple, I think he's coming back. 1 year, $3 to $4 million deal. Another guy that I didn't have in my plan. And again, you need to go watch my plan, but I think you're going to be happy he sticks around. If I had to guess, I would say that the Bengals retain CJ Uzomah. And for everything that he brings, right? Leadership, intangibles, on-field play. Played really well this past season. Obviously has a good rapport with Joe Burrow, means a lot to the locker room. And I think the Bengals are going to reward that. He's making around $6 million in 2021. He's going to get a raise. I think the Bengals are going to say, look, don't crush us here because we want to get back to the Super Bowl. And so I think they're going to split the difference a little bit because he's probably asking in the 8 to 9 range. The Bengals would love to get him at 6, ultimately settle at 7+, 3 years, $22 million. Again, how will the contract be structured? All of that stuff, I don't know. but I would say $7 to $7.5 million per, 7.25, something like that. For CJ Uzama, he sticks around for the foreseeable future. And I would not be against that, right? Even though I didn't have him in my plan. It's tough. It's tough when you're trying to balance things out and you're trying to upgrade the offensive line, but you want to be more dynamic and you want to do this. And something has to give. And so for me, I prioritized offensive line a little bit more, and while still keeping the same depth. The Bengals, we'll see if they do that. I also have them signing offensive line-wise, because I know we're on it, Jermaine Ifedi from the Bills, or from Chicago, excuse me. A guy, you could plug him in at tackle and give them some kind of proven tackle this offseason, right? And it might not be him. It might be Riley Reef. But I think they're going to come away with a veteran guard, a veteran center, and a veteran tackle. And to me, just looking at the number of tackles versus the number of guards, it's going to be tough. They'll probably spend around the same on each position, even though they value tackle more. And I don't think they're going to break the bank on guard. And so I think it'll be around the same. If Eddie could command $6-7 million per. I would say the same thing with Reef or anybody in that range. So insert whatever name you want there in that pay range. It's not like they're going to get, Morgan Moses is probably going to ask for a little bit more than that. We'll see. I also don't think they would love the idea of that. Eric Fisher could be a guy, but are you going to move Jonah Williams just to plug Eric Fisher in at left tackle? Not sure, but I do think they come away with a tackle because you just don't want to put yourself in a position where it's, okay, we have Isaiah Prince, we have Deontay Smith, unless you spend big money on both guard spots. But I think they plan on Jackson Carman playing one of those guard spots. In this case, it would be right guard next year. He would stay there. And I think that would be okay. Like, if that's your worst spot, that would be okay. The problem is in my plan, I spent more money on tackle than they would in this scenario. And again, this is my prediction for what they do. And the other thing they value a lot is cornerback. And so I have them signing Sidney Jones to a 1-year, $4 million deal. I think that is a guy young, has shown flashes. They target guys like that, right? Where, it might not be, and they might not break the bank on one guy for $8 or $10 million. Instead, they bring back Eli Apple, they bring back Sidney Jones, and they'll probably draft a corner. So I think this is kind of what they're thinking. Mid-tier guard, let's keep our own, let's keep Uzama, let's keep guys like Eli Apple if the contract is right and it is in this situation. Let's keep BJ Hill and go from there. And Riley Reef could be in that mix, like I said. I would not mind Riley Reef. If he continues to play, there's rumors and rumblings about retirement. If he wants to play, the dude can play guard as well. And I like that versatility. And I know the Bengals like that versatility. So that would be, if I had to guess, what they would do. Now, I want to close here because I still think that they could make a lot of these moves over the next week and then be in on Laramie Tunsil. Maybe they don't sign the tackle and they're in on a Laramie Tunsil deal and they kind of wait for the draft and decide, you know what, let's make this deal. Let's get Tunsil. That'll be our pick. I would not be shocked at that. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. Wouldn't be shocked at it because this team values tackle. They do. And this organization values that position. And if you can get a 27-year-old and that's really high-end pass blocker, that's a really promising player and should be in his prime, especially if you still have your questions about Jonah Williams, you probably do that. The other thing is, will they pick up Jonah's fifth-year option? Will they be able to get a deal done with Jesse Bates, which could result in more cash going his way this season than that $12 million, but would result in a lower cap hit. So that's the part of it that is interesting. That's the unknown. I don't expect and anticipate the Bengals to do any restructuring with any of these guys to free up more cap space. I do think they're going to release Trey Waynes if they haven't by the time you've seen this. And, same thing goes for a guy like Trey Hopkins, who I think they would like to have back, but not at $6 million, a $6 million cap hit. So maybe it's a release and, hey, Trey, come back for $3.5 or $4 million. And then you're okay with him being a backup at that price. And you could still go out and sign a big-time center, and then he can be your swing interior lineman. So they have options, but I think if I had to predict what the Bengals are going to do, they would ink Bradley Bozeman. He would be their big get. They would re-sign B.J. Hill. They would bring in Andrew Norwell, re-sign C.J. Uzomah, re-sign Eli Apple, bring in Sidney Jones, and then bring in some kind of tackle. Fetty, it could be Riley Reef, someone like that in that range. I don't think they'll love Morgan Moses. I think if they wanted to go that route, they would have last offseason when he was available, when I was saying, hey, you guys should go after Morgan Moses, but who am I? I digress. So yeah, that is my prediction for what the Bengals do. They're going to have other guys under the radar signings. I personally would love, if they could find another piece, another weapon. Those receivers were really, really healthy this year. Could you get a Jamison Crowder on a deal where he's like, man, I just want a ring? Someone like that would be pretty cool to add. I know the Bengals know they need to add at the wide receiver spot just because they were blessed with health. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do it in free agency, but that's a spot to look at. Even if they re-sign C.J. Uzomah, I think tight end, could you get an O.J. Howard or someone like that? In my plan, I didn't have either one of those guys for the Bengals, so make sure you check out my plan as well. But that's what I think the Bengals are going to do. Would you be underwhelmed by this? Overwhelmed by this? Obviously, they have the draft, and they're going to be able to supplement it with a bunch of different draft picks as well. And, as you know, my predictions aren't always right. But if I had to guess, that's what I think the Bengals are going to do in free agency. Sound off in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and buckle up. Ring the bell for alerts, because guess what? Once the tampering period begins on Monday, we're going to be updating you as much as possible with any rumors, any rumblings. We're going to have live shows. It's going to be crazy. We'll have guests. I'm going to be nonstop. So what you have to do is hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, tell all of your friends to come to Cincinnati Bengals Talk, to go to allbengals.com. And until next time, for Andrew Fox Miller, our channel manager, I'm James Rapien, signing off right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk.